We're continuing in chapter 472, Tough Ayin Bays, in the Alter Shulchan Aruch Halacha 2. So yesterday in Halacha Aleph, we learned that one should set the table, make it prepared to make it ready for the Seder prior to nightfall. So that way the Seder can begin right away and the children don't fall asleep. And we learned that the Chabad custom is to set the kaira, that is the Seder plate, to set it at the table as part of the Seder. Even though the rest of the table, the tablecloth, the chairs, and everything else should be set earlier. And Halacha Beis, we're learning that although one is to set the table early, make sure you don't start early. So we're learning Halacha Beis. Nonetheless, notwithstanding the fact that one should rush to set the table earlier so that children don't fall asleep, don't rush your Seder though. Don't rush to make the Kiddush, to recite the Kiddush, before it's absolutely and definitely nighttime. Right? We have the Ben Hashmoshes between the two times where it's doubt as there's
Sunset and nightfall.
Between sunset and nightfall, where we're not sure if it belongs to the previous day or to the next day. And therefore, you got to wait till it's actually nightfall, till the end of that time period. Absolute nightfall. Now, even though any other holiday, a person can extend the holiday and usher it in earlier while it's still weekday, and that would make Kiddush and eat while it's still daytime. Right? You could bring Shabbos in early. You could bring Yom Tov in early. Okay. Nonetheless, the Pesach, when it comes to Pesach, one cannot do so. You can bring Yom Tov early, but you cannot begin your Seder and make Kiddush early. Why is that? Matzah has been linked in scripture to the eating of the Korban Pesach. As the verse reads, the verse states that the Pesach offering should be eaten with your matzah and maror. Okay, so the laws that apply to Pesach to the Pesach offering have been linked to matzah. With Pesach Nemar, and when it comes to the Pesach, it says, you have to eat the meat at nighttime, on this night, the Laila Mamish, literally at night, not when you bring it in early. Now, the key, and therefore, if the Pesach offering must be eaten at night, the matzah also must be eaten at absolute nighttime, not when you bring Yom Tov early. The key, because matzah, which is a biblical mitzvah, can only be performed while it's nighttime. Therefore, gam kol ha'arba kaisis, also all the 4 cups, which the sages implemented as a commemoration of our freedom to drink the 4 cups of wine, is only to be consumed, only to be performed. This mitzvah is only to be performed at nighttime. This man matzah at the same time when you would be able to eat matzah.
So it's like matzah is being piggybacked off of the Torah, and the wine is being piggybacked off of the.
That's right. So, or make it to be more accurate, the matzah is being linked to the Pesach, and the wine is piggybacking on the matzah, right? Because biblically speaking, the matzah and Pesach are stuck together, but they're both at nighttime. Now the sages, as he's about to say, that when the sages make an establishment, they always do it in such a way that it's linked to something in Scripture, and therefore follow the patterns of what Scripture requires. So Scripture requires the matzah at nighttime. And therefore, the sages' 4 cups of wine are also linked to the nighttime as the Pesach, as the matzah is, which the matzah itself came from its linkage to Pesach. Right? This is something that's going to come up in the Gemara soon. The Koshel Kiddush and the cup of Kiddush, is one of the 4 cups. The cup of Kiddush is one of the 4 cups of wine. Therefore, you require to start your Seder at nighttime, literally, which is open to the Kiddush. And therefore the Kiddush cannot be recited during the time that you may have added to Pesach by bringing Yom Tov in early while it's still day. So you can bring Pesach in early, no problem. But it's not going to help you make your Seder early because your Seder still has to begin after nightfall.
Is this why on Yom Tov, let's see, Sukkot Yom Tov, the first night is earlier than the second night, right? The first night is about earlier.
Well,
because you can bring it in early.
Yeah, but
The second night is only
after you completely finish day one. That's right. The second night can only be performed once the first night's completely out. Two days you can actually bring early then too, but whatever. No, it's not so simple either. It's not so simple. You could in theory bring young. Anyway, it depends if the second day Shabbos or not. Complicated, but yes, it's the same principles about whether or not you can bring that day in early. Bring that holy day in early. So you can, actually the only Yom Tov we don't bring in early is Shavuos. Because we want to have 7 complete weeks of counting. And not to shorten the days of the Seder Sa'ima by bringing Shavuos in early. But otherwise you can bring Yom Tov in early. Even Pesach you can bring early. You just can't make your Seder early. Because your Kiddush, which is the first of your 4 cups of wine, must be done at absolute nighttime. Okay. So you can have Ma'ariv early and start Pesach early, no problem. But you'll be sitting around waiting for your Seder to be done. Or waiting for your Seder to begin, I should say. Okay. Now here's the interesting part I mentioned yesterday. The Alter Rebbe changes the pattern from the original Shulchan Aruch. So the original Shulchan Aruch, as I said, begins with the first halacha, which we read yesterday, which says, make sure you set your table early so your children don't fall asleep. Now, the second halacha here in the Alter Rebbe is taken from the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch, which say, even though you're supposed to set your table early, don't start your Seder early. Now, the next halacha in the Shulchan Aruch reads, now when you set your table, set it with a chair that you can lean on. And then he begins to discuss the laws of leaning, of reclining. The Alter Rebbe doesn't do that. The statement, when you set your table, which he already told you in halacha aleph, you should set your table early. But the statement which then says, and you should set your table with a seat to recline on, comes in halacha 7. In halacha 7, Alter Rebbe it says, should prepare a place where we can sit reclining. That comes in halacha 7. Well, for whatever reason, now in halacha 3, 4, 5, 6, before 7, he's going to talk about details of when you should and shouldn't recline. Specifically related to someone who's in mourning. I'm not sure why it's stuck in here. I don't know. Just saying that this is requires further investigation. So why that is.
And the Shulchan Aruch talks about it.
Afterward? I believe so. 1 second. I believe so. About the mourner?
No, not the mourner, about setting the table.
He does. The Shulchan Aruch does.
Yeah.
Begins by saying, set your table. And halacha number 2 says, make sure it's set beautifully, because it's Pesach, it's got to be freedom, and make sure you set a place so you can lean. And then it goes on, gets into how you lean.
That's right, halacha 2.
Halacha 2. But he actually doesn't even speak about a mourner and whether a mourner should be doing leaning or not. He doesn't mention that at all over here. But the Alter Rebbe, for whatever reason, does decide to insert that at this point.
Number 7.
The Alter Rebbe puts it at number 7. Okay, the number of halachas in the Alter Rebbe will always be more because he's adding more details in the Shulchan Aruch. That's fine. But I'm talking about the order, though. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't discuss at all regarding the mourner leaning. Inserts that here as opposed to inserting it after you first tell us, by the way, you have to set up a place to lean and you have to lean. So he tells you about the laws of leaning as regards to a mourner without first telling you you're supposed to set a place to lean. And only in halacha 7 does he tell you to set a place to lean, which is strange, right? It's a strange structure, order. And again, I don't know the answer. I'm just telling you that this requires further investigation. And I'm sure I'm not the first one to think of this, and I'm sure there are other commentators.
What does it mean to prepare?
Prepare a seat for yourself to recline.
Well,
like a pillow or something.
So
there's nothing additional you need to do, right? You just lean.
Whatever that is, we'll get to that. We'll see soon what that means.
Okay.
We'll see soon what that means, but whatever it is, it's got to be that statement is there in the halacha. When we get to there, we'll look at what that means.
As a child, I was actually reading my parents had the custom of having pillows.
Just for Pesach?
For Pesach.
Yeah, many I've seen many homes. Many homes. I know that's done. Okay. In fact, I think the Chabad Rebbes would have two pillows, and when they would hide their middle matzah, it would be between the pillows. If I remember correctly. From my reading. Okay, Gimel. So let's see. Now, the halacha study begins with Mishu Avel, one who is in mourning, Afilu al Avel v'imoy, even if he's mourning for his parent, for a father and mother. Chayav lahasif is required to recline. This is how he introduces the law of reclining. Doesn't say a person's obligated to recline tonight, even if you're mourning. This is how he starts off. Someone who's a mourner, even someone who's a mourner, requires to recline. The Einer Rasha, it is inappropriate to refrain from reclining, out of consideration for his mourning. Because once the Shiva has passed, and the Shiva is now broken by the Yom Tif, right? Even if it were a weekday and the Shiva were done, he's allowed to recline on his bed. The requirement to literally turn over the bed, which means to not have as comfortable a look in Halacha 13. In the Talmudic era, it was customary for a mourner to overturn his bed during the week of Shiva. See the Shulchan Aruch, which mentions this practice, but states that is no longer observed. Instead, other commentaries explain it is customary to sit in a low stool during the Shiva period. Right? Okay, but that's over Elotel Shiva. It's only during Shiva. Once that's done, it's done. So now, therefore, when Pesach comes and the Shiva is over, you are allowed to recline, and therefore you have to recline. Continues. Pesach. Even if the funeral was on Erev Pesach that morning, nonetheless, excuse me. Pesach, the moment Pesach sets in, the Shiva has now been, it's done. So long as he did Shiva for at least 1 hour before that kicked in. So long as Shiva was performed for any time period before Yom Tif, once Yom Tif starts, the Shiva is over, and therefore one is required to recline. As explained in the appropriate section of Shulchan Aruch discussing the laws of mourning, how mourning ends when Yom Tov starts. Therefore, it continues. Halacha Dalid. But if he did not have any opportunity to observe any part of the Shiva before Pesach starts, the Inyan in such a manner, and therefore the Shiva has not been completely abolished, because it's only abolished once you practice. If you practice the Shiva and Yom Tov comes in, then it's abolished. But if you didn't get to practice it, now the Shiva isn't really appended, right? Then the custom is not to recline on Pesach. We consider this reclining as private matters, which is observed even during the holidays. Let's explain. When a person's in the middle of Shiva, let's say, let's just take Shabbos in the middle of Shiva, right? So the Shiva continues after Shabbos. Shabbos doesn't stop the Shiva; it just breaks. It's a break. Yeah, okay. But it's a break in Shiva. Shabbos is a break in Shiva. So on Shabbos, one is not allowed to publicly display any mourning. Mourning cannot be displayed publicly on Shabbos. But in private, yes. Namely, most common thing is intimacy. Intimacy still remains forbidden on Shabbos during the Shiva, even though Shabbos suspends the Shiva. But it only suspends it so that publicly no display of mourning. Okay, so now, says Alter Rebbe, reclining is considered a private affair. Because reclining is considered a private affair, it's still considered forbidden even during Yom Tif, if the Shiva is around. If you took an hour of Shiva before Yom Tif, then Yom Tif ended the Shiva. But if you didn't get to observe the Shiva before Yom Tif, then when Yom Tif happens, so which means really the Shiva is going to start after Yom Tif is over, which means now it's like you're in Shabbos mid-Shiva, and therefore forbidden to recline. Just like it'd be forbidden for intimacy, because it's considered a marriage that's in private. Clear? Follow that? Yeah. In other words, if you didn't get to do Shiva before Pesach, then the whole Pesach is like a long Shabbos mid-Shiva, in which public displays of mourning is forbidden, but private displays of mourning are required. And reclining is considered a private matter, and therefore forbidden to do at the Seder if you're mid-Shiva. But you're only mid-Shiva if you haven't got to, if one hasn't got to perform that, to observe that Shiva before Yom Tif. If one was able to observe the Shiva pre-Yom Tif, then the Shiva is done, not suspended like Shabbos. Clear? Okay, continues. Alter Rebbe. It's so funny how before he gets to the laws of reclining, he sticks in this idea about a mourner. It's hard for me to understand it. Like you think this come at the end. After he told you all the laws of reclining, he would say, by the way, here's the law about a mourner. And not begin with the mourner.
But intimacy is a private, it's an exception?
No, intimacy is considered a private practice, and therefore forbidden.
It would be allowed, but
and therefore it's forbidden.
Exception.
No. Anything that's private, you have to observe.
You have to observe.
So the prohibition against intimacy, which is a private matter, must be observed even on Shabbos of your Shiva.
I see. Okay, I had it reversed.
Right?
Right.
No. Must be performed means you can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to observe the law that prohibits you.
Right.
No,
and reclining is like a private matter.
And therefore you must observe the prohibition against it.
It's like because he didn't observe any of the mourners' rules
before Yom Tif.
So it's treated like a Shabbos.
Correct. And therefore he may not recline on the Shabbos.
It's a private matter.
And therefore he may not recline. So he has to observe that. He has to observe the prohibition, and therefore he may not recline. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Because observe here means the reverse. Don't do it.
No.
Observe means don't do it, because you're observing the laws of Shiva means don't recline and don't intimacy. Right. That's the twist. That's the twist here. The language twist that makes it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just funny. He didn't tell us the laws of reclining, but he's telling us the laws of a mourner. And we're going to see he's going to take the tangent to the laws of a mourner to other things that aren't even related to reclining, as we'll see in a second.
I guess by teaching the laws of the mourner, it implies that that the rest of us have to.
Right, that's a funny way to do it. Instead of saying everybody got to recline, here's why, here's how. And by the way, even a mourner has to do it. That's what you would imagine he would do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he doesn't, which is just interesting. Good morning, Alan. We're middle of class. We'll continue.
Good.
Hi, Alan.
Yeah.
Hey.
Unless so even though this person, because he's in the middle of mourning and therefore he doesn't recline at the Seder, nonetheless, he can wear his kittel. Shaloshim b'shas asiyas Seder that many had the custom of wearing during the Seder. It's not the Chabad custom. The Chabad custom is we only wear a kittel.
It's a kittel.
A kittel is the white garment, the white clothing we wear on Yom Kippur.
Oh, I have one.
It's called a kittel. So the Chabad custom is actually we only wear it once a year. That's it. It's such a lofty spiritual experience that we only wear this once a year. We wear it in Yom Kippur and no other time of year. We're so particular about not wearing it more than once a year, to the point that if a person gets married, they don't wear a kittel that year Yom Kippur because they already wore it this year. So you only wear it once a year. That's our custom, and therefore our custom is not to wear it at the Seder. But many do. So says the Alter Rebbe, if your custom is, and this is the assumption because he's talking to Ashkenazi Jews whose custom it is to wear the kittel at the Seder, at least the leader wears the kittel, not everybody, maybe just the leader. And I think different families, different customs. Did anybody wear kittel at your Seder or just the leader? Just the leader, right? I think my mother's grandfather also, he used to wear kittel, but nobody else, just the leader. My great grandfather, and when I was very little, they stopped going before. Anyway, so this person may, even though he's in mourning, and therefore he was not going to recline at the Seder, he may wear his kittel. Why? Because the kittel is also similar to shrouds, and therefore there's an element of mourning to it. And the reason why the kittel is worn is to give humility as you come to the Seder, and therefore, that's not inconsistent with his mourning state, and therefore he could wear the kippah. Right? The point is that he should have a humble heart. The white kittel is meant to remind him not to be too frivolous, because he's freedom. I'm free. It's a Seder. You're free, but not frivolous, and therefore keep the kittel on to remain humble. That's the message.
That applies for everyone.
So therefore, the mourner can do that too, because it's not inconsistent with the state of mourning. Whereas reclining is inconsistent with his mourning, and therefore he should not. But again, it's only if he's actually in the mourning of Shiva. But if he observed any laws of Shiva before Yom Tov, then when Yom Tov comes, the Shiva is over, and therefore he should recline. Now in Halacha Hey, he takes a tangent. Since we're talking about the mourner anyway, we're going to throw out another law about the mourner. If you're talking about what degree the mourner is allowed to observe and what he's not allowed to observe, we're going to throw out one more halacha about that. We clear so far? Yeah. Okay. Halacha Hey 5. The Avel is obligated to recite the Hallel on this night. And as he says in footnote 20, the Alter Rebbe mentions the practice of reciting Hallel during the Seder in section 479, which is going to come soon, and in 480, which is coming soon. We're in 472 now. With regard to the recitation of the Hallel in the evening service in Ma'ariv, it's in 487. The Alter Rebbe writes that it is not customary to recite the Hallel on Pesach night in the Ashkenazi community. Nevertheless, in the Seder, the Alter Rebbe rules that the Hallel should be recited. Okay. Thus, the statement here regarding the mourner is obviously referring to the recitation of the Hallel during the Seder. Okay. The question has been raised regarding whether a mourner should recite Hallel during the evening service, because you're doing it at the Seder, and you're only obligated to do it once. Right? Are you following this or no?
Yeah.
The point is that a mourner, usually we don't do Hallel in the mourner's house.
Okay.
But the night of the Seder, Hallel is obligatory, so it has to be done. Okay? But how many times are you obligated to do Hallel on the night of the Seder? Obligated only once. We happen to do it twice. Once in the evening service and again in our Seder. But really, the mitzvah is only once.
So that
Which
would be the
means-
Ma'ariv service, no?
Oh, that's the point here. Which Hallel is he talking about here?
Hallel.
The Seder or the evening service?
Mhm.
So they're putting in the footnote. It must mean the Alter Rebbe is talking about the Hallel at the Seder. How do we know that? Because in the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe doesn't write that you have to do Hallel in the Seder, in Ma'ariv. In the Alter Rebbe's Seder, he put Hallel in Ma'ariv, so we end up doing it. But in the Shulchan Aruch, where he talks to the vast Ashkenazi community, he doesn't put Hallel in the night in the Ma'ariv, and therefore the Hallel he's talking about here is the one at the Seder. And the question becomes, should this mourner then do the Hallel at the Ma'ariv or not? Since the Alter Rebbe is only giving permission here for one Hallel at the Seder, should he be doing the one at the should he be doing the one in the Ma'ariv or not? Yeah. So the Torah Gavriel rules: if the community does it, do it. It's a contemporary. The Torah Gavriel Tziner lives today in Borough Park. He's an expert on the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and compiler of halacha.
Now, this piece where the mourner exercised some of his.
It's a case where the mourner did not do. If he did some shiva before the Seder started,
He's like anybody else.
he's like anybody else.
Okay, yeah.
This is someone who did not perform the shiva before the Seder, so now he's in a Shabbos mode of.
It's a Shabbos
Shiva.
with a
So
suspension.
even though he wouldn't ordinarily do a Hallel if it was a normal shiva, but here he would, because of the obligation element of it that you have to do Hallel on Seder
Because
night.
It's also public too,
That's right. Well,
right?
is it public or not? Because we already said that the leaning.
Ma'ariv is public.
Yes, that's true. Ma'ariv is public,
So he would do it.
so maybe that's why.
Based
Maybe
on
that's
that
why.
reason.
Yes, but it seems from here you would do it again even at the Seder night because of the
Because
obligation
that's
element.
The biblical one.
There we go.
That's why he would
Seemingly,
repeat it.
seemingly. It's not so simple like that's the biblical one because we actually make the bracha.
Well, just based
We make the
on
bracha
how
about
the-
Ma'ariv, but that's a good question.
how the Shulchan Aruch
Yeah,
are structured.
Yes, correct. The Shulchan Aruch structure implies that the primary is the one at the Seder. Very good.
But during the Ma'ariv,
Yeah.
he doesn't get up and dance or bang or
No,
anything
no,
like
no, no.
that.
That's
He,
even
he
if it wasn't
stays
Shiva.
quiet.
Even if it
Yeah.
wasn't Shiva, he wouldn't do that. Even if it's all year round, he wouldn't dance during the Ma'ariv.
Yeah.
Even not Shiva. Here we're talking about Shiva time, where his Shiva starts with Pesach, which really means that his actual Shiva is going to start after Pesach is over.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he gets back to setting his table. Now he gets back to the halacha setting the table. Now that it's such a funny structure. He began by saying, set your table early. Don't start your Seder too early. Then he launched into 4 halachas about a mourner, including the mourner and his relationship to Hallel, and now comes back to setting his table. So I really don't know why it's I keep on repeating it, but it's like it's so bizarre. I suppose. Okay. Vav.
But you think
Yes.
there's always a
Purpose and a reason.
Purpose and reason.
100%.
100%.
100% there's a reason for sure. Not even a question. Not even a question for sure.
Let's make the sensitivity they have mourners and want to make sure that they didn't
Feel excluded.
Exactly.
Maybe. My like the simplest explanation is that I was looking for is if the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch inserted at this point and just following the pattern, he's following the pattern of the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch. But I don't know why the commentaries in the Shulchan Aruch put it here either.
And maybe it's because this could be so commonly misunderstood.
He's expecting you only to read the half. He's expecting you to read only half the chapter.
No,
So if we're
right.
maybe I don't know. It's certainly interesting. It certainly requires explanation. All of this are good suggestions, and I
Right.
would love to see something that gives like a good insight.
No, of
Maybe
course.
somebody who would actually would have a comment and load it by
There are many commentaries that run on the Shulchan Aruch and not the Shulchan Aruch.
But that's why.
Yeah, maybe when we finished out there was commentary on the halachas on the reclining. I'm going to share with you at least parts of a talk that Rabbi gave on his analysis of the mitzvah of reclining. Maybe in there we'll find some explanation. I learned I don't remember him discussing it, but maybe
Commentaries.
I'll have to look. You know what? I'll have to look. That commentary on the Seder. I'll have to look there where he discusses the laws of reclining. I'll have to see. Maybe. Have to see. Maybe. Maybe. Let's see. Okay, Vov. Now it gets back to setting the table. Okay, so you're setting the table before Yom Tov starts because you want to be able to start right away. And right away means right after nightfall, not any earlier.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah. Now continues halacha vav. Even though all year round it's appropriate not to be too aggrandized, is that the right word? With excuse me. Not to be too over the top with our setting our table, because we are all in national mourning ever since the destruction of the temple. There are many observances we do where we temper our enthusiasm, considering that we're mourning the destruction of the temple, most notably breaking the glass at a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Additionally, a little less known, but something we should know: if you're building a house from scratch, you're meant to leave one part of the wall unfinished as a reminder that while we're building our home, God's home is in destruction.
Is it just a home or any building?
It's a good question. Meaning, shul. No, shul doesn't. Shul, because the shul is God's home. But one part of the wall, yeah. But it's only if you build it. If you buy it and renovate, no. But only if you build it. I remember my great grandparents' home. When you walked into they built their house. You walked into the front door, like a little vestibule, or like a coat room kind of thing. And there was doors going into like the foyer room, where you're going into like the hallway, kind of lobby. So above that door, there was a spot on the wall where there was no paint, no plaster, there was exposed brick. In observance of this practice. So as part of that practice, we refrain from being too over the top.
We temper our enthusiasm.
Too over the top in our beautiful vessels, because beautiful vessels, Hashem's house is missing all those beautiful vessels, right? So we don't have them. Yeah. Many recite that pasuk as they break the glass.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. So many recite that verse in Meshkech Yerushalayim. They recite that verse before they break the glass. There's many of that custom. Okay, continues out there. Now, even though this is true all year round, we come nonetheless. Belil Pesach, on the night of the Seder, one should increase in beautiful vessels to the best of his ability. Yeah. And footnote 24, it was customary in the household of the Rebbes to display golden and silver utensils on the Seder table. The Rebbe Rayatz previous Rebbe explained, that this practice recalls the great wealth with which the Jews left Egypt. And as we'll see from the Rebbe's Haggadah, he talks there about different vessels they had passed down from generation to generation, having a cup even from the Alter Rebbe, from the first Rebbe of Chabad, on the table. And there was the Chabad Rebbe had a custom of putting certain vessels on the table, even if they didn't use them, but to have them displayed there on the Seder. vessels, utensils that they had received from generations prior. Yeah. And as he says here, afilu hakelim she'ein tzarich l'suda, even vessels that are not required for the meal, yisadrim yafal shulchan, should be displayed beautifully on the table.
Like for an
Adornment.
purposes.
Correct. Lenoi zeicher l'chedes, chedes is a way of beauty to demonstrate and recall our freedom. And it continues. Even if he has utensils belonging to a non-Jew that he's holding as just as collateral, right? I lent the non-Jew some money, so he's giving me his vase to hold on to until I pay him back. You can put them on the table just to make the table more beautiful. Even if he decides he wants to use them, this is not considered stealing, and not considered deceiving the non-Jew. As explained in those laws, and because you're not going to read the whole footnote here, because you don't really have that part of the Shulchan Aruch, but the point is that when you take collateral, the person giving it to you, depending on their circumstances, assumes they're going to be using it, and therefore, as long as you return it in its entirety without it being ruined, it's not considered theft, and therefore have that displayed on your table too.
Oh, you can utilize the collateral.
Say it again.
You can utilize a collateral that you've taken, provided it's not
From a non-Jew, yes.
From
From a non-Jew. Yeah.
Not non.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the footnote here, they quote
It's a non-Jew.
where there it says, for using an entrusted article is not outright theft. One is merely making use of an entrusted article for his own purposes, and he's willing to make restitution if by using it he reduces the value in any way. In other words, when the non-Jew gives you a collateral, is expecting that you're going to be using it at least for its normal purpose, not in some unusual way. But if it's a watch or anyway, the laws of that are not relevant right now. But the point is that he should and could display this on the table as a way of demonstrating freedom. Now, finally, here, Halacha 70 says, "Oh, when you set your table beautifully with a chair to lean on," which, of course, is the part that's been racking my mind. Okay, so that we'll look at with Hashem's help on Monday. Wonderful Shabbos, everyone, and we'll hear good news, God willing, and this Shabbos will bring peace and harmony to everywhere, and especially our fellow Jews.
Amen.
Rabbi,